What time are you listening to this, and where are you right now? Drop it in the comments, because I believe. Maybe you felt erased in your own home too, until the day they realized they needed the one they cast aside. Hi, I'm Odell. 2 weeks ago, my sister screamed at me right in front of our parents. You ruined my life, but the part that hurt the most wasn't her words. It was the moment I looked over and saw my parents nod, as if they agreed. I didn't scream back. I didn't cry. I just tightened the strap on my backpack, turned around, and walked out of that house, leaving behind everything, including the idea that it was ever a safe place for me. I left that late afternoon. The sky was gray clouds drifting like they had no place to be. I rolled my old suitcase down damp brick streets, passing homes with golden lights inside, families laughing over dinner. Me, I had no one. Just my shaking hands trying to pull up the cheapest bus out of that neighborhood. No goodbyes. No where are you going. No don't forget your jacket. At the cold bus stop bench, I held my backpack tight, like a last lifeline, and her voice echoed in my head. You always ruin everything. People boarded. Everyone was staring at their phones. No one looked at me. And in that moment, I realized I was already a ghost in my own family. Now I was just a ghost passing through someone else's story. The bus rumbled along empty roads, streetlights streaking the windows like brief flashes of memory. I wondered, would anyone notice I was gone? Would they see my favorite teacup missing from the kitchen? My chair at the table? Empty. Or would they just fill that space with something else, like they always filled my silence with fake laughter at family dinners? I got off in a part of town I'd never seen, a rundown motel neon sign flickering its tired light bouncing off rain-soaked pavement. I walked in. Smell of bleach and old cigarettes hit me. The guy at the front desk didn't even look up cash or card. I handed over the last of the money in my wallet. Got a key with the room number scratched out, rewritten in black marker. The room was tiny, damp, but at least it was mine. At least no one here could tell me I was too much to handle. I sat at the edge of the bed, back against the wall, staring at water stains on the ceiling. I didn't cry. I didn't even have tears left. I just sat there, listening to the ticking clock, footsteps in the hallway, and the quiet getting louder inside my chest. That night, my phone buzzed. A delivery notification: your package has been delivered. And I remembered, it was the gift I sent my mom on her birthday last year, a silk handkerchief I skipped breakfast for a week to afford. I wrapped it carefully, wrote on the card, I hope one day you'll open this. But that message, it felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder that gift was never opened, just like me, unseen, unheard, unwanted. I put my phone down, pulled my backpack closer, rested my forehead on my knees, and whispered to myself, why am I trying so hard to belong somewhere that's already erased me from its memory? You know, maybe you felt that too. Sitting alone in a dark room, asking yourself what you did wrong, wondering why you are always the one who has to leave, the one who has to stay silent, just to keep everyone else comfortable. And maybe you've wondered, if I disappeared, would anyone even notice? If you're listening to this, I want you to drop a comment. What time is it? Where are you right now? And have you ever felt like you've been erased from your own family's story? Because I believe this with everything in me, we are not alone in this silence. We are not invisible shadows. We deserve to exist, even when the people we love the most choose to turn their backs on us. That day, I didn't know what was waiting for me ahead. I didn't know if I'd survive with just a few crumpled bills in my wallet. Didn't know if I'd find a job, a place to stay, or even someone who'd ask me how I was doing. But I knew one thing: I walked out that door. I had the courage to leave, to choose silence not out of weakness, but to protect my heart from being torn apart by unfair blame. And that's how this journey began. Are you ready to keep walking with me? People always say family is where you come back to. But no one ever talks about how much it hurts when family is the very place that cuts you out of their life. I remember that night so clearly, the night everything started to unravel. My sister Seraphine was live streaming, celebrating her 50,000 followers. The ring light cast this glow on her face. She looked radiant, confident. Fake laughter echoed through the living room, bouncing off the giant cream-colored sofa. My parents sat beside her, nodding proudly, like she had just won a Nobel Prize. And me, I stood frozen in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, holding a cup of cold tea I had reheated 3 times. No one looked at me. No one said my name. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I was a ghost, an invisible wall in a house I helped clean where I cooked meals and paid part of the bills every month. I used to think if I just worked hard, stayed quiet, didn't bother anyone, maybe they'd love me, maybe they'd see me. But no, they never did, not once. Then my sister's laptop flickered. The stream lagged a bit, and her expression instantly changed. Oh, come on, not now. She suddenly turned to me, the white ring light still glowing on her face, eyes burning. Why do you always ruin everything, Odell? I froze. What are you talking about? I asked, totally confused. You stressing me out just by standing there breathing. Odell, she screamed. You're ruining my vibe. I looked at our parents, hoping, praying they would say something. Just something. Maybe don't talk to him like that, or Odell didn't do anything wrong. But no. My mom, Verena, stood up, adjusted her sleeves, and said in a flat, icy tone, She's right. Every time something good happens, you ruin it. You've ruined her life. And honestly, you've ruined ours too. I heard something break inside my chest. But on the outside, I just swallowed hard, my face burning, my hand gripping the mug so tight just to stop it from shaking. My dad said nothing. He just rubbed the bridge of his nose and looked away like he was too tired to deal with the problem. And apparently that problem was me. No one stood up for me. No one asked what I had done wrong. No one saw me. I turned slowly, walking toward the tiny guest room they let me use while I get my life together. The old door creaked as it shut behind me. The room smelled of mold and cheap expired air freshener. The carpet was worn dusty. I looked around at the little I owned, an old backpack, a few clothes, and a cracked laptop that barely worked. I didn't cry. I just took a breath, unzipped the backpack, and started folding clothes. No family photos. No birthday cards I used to keep hidden in drawers. Nothing that could make me soft enough to turn back. I realized the letters I wrote, the apologies I repeated over and over. No one ever read them. No one ever cared. 15 minutes later, I stepped out. Backpack on an old canvas tote with my toiletries in hand. As I passed the living room, my sister was already live streaming again, that fake smile back on her face as the camera lit up. My mom pretended not to see me walk by. No one asked where I was going. No one asked if I needed anything. No one tried to stop me. The door clicked shut behind me with a soft thunk, but it echoed in my ears like a full stop. Outside, cold wind slipped through my thin jacket. I pulled the collar up and started walking the familiar street one last time. I passed the corner store where I used to buy milk with my dad as a kid. The tiny park where I'd sit and read to avoid going home. The bakery where I'd sneak pastries my mom never let me eat. I stopped at the bus station, stared at the schedule. My heart was empty. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing: I couldn't go back. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was nothing left to go back to. The bus pulled up. I climbed on, dropped my last coins in the fare box, and took a window seat. I watched the streets blur behind me, yellow streetlights flashing across the glass, casting brief streaks of light on my face. For the first time in years, I let out a breath. No one yelling my name in anger. No one looking at me like I was a burden. No one making me shrink myself to keep their peace. I placed a hand over my chest, felt my heart beat. And in that moment, I realized even if they had chosen to erase me from their lives, I was still here, and that my friend is how I left my family. No screaming, no tears. Just a step out the door, a quiet exit, and a promise to myself I will find a place where I don't need permission to exist. I don't remember exactly when I fell asleep in that tiny motel room. Just that when I woke up, the morning light leaked through the torn curtains, painting the floor in dull gray streaks. I lay there for a while, listening to the hum of the busted AC, the sound of traffic outside, and the smell of bleach and stale cigarettes still hanging in the air. I blinked, and I realized I had survived the night. I sat up, reached down, and ran my fingers across the backpack at the foot of the bed. This backpack had been with me through everything: college classes, failed job interviews, breakdowns in the library where I cried into my hoodie, feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. And now, it was still here, with me, even when the world felt like it had no place left for me. I pulled a chair closer to the small wooden desk, set my laptop down, and powered it up. The cracked corner of the screen flickered, but it still worked. I opened my email, scrolled past junk ads and payment reminders from services I no longer used until I stopped at an old folder, SAT ACT tutoring. Years ago, when I was still in college, I used to tutor high school kids, helping them prep for the SAT edit college essays, plan their study schedules. I used to love that job. I loved the way their eyes lit up when they finally understood a tough math concept. Loved the way they smiled when I showed them how to write a hook that pulled the reader in. Loved hearing them talk about their dreams. That was the last time I remember feeling useful. Seen. I reopened my old tutor profile on a teaching platform. My display photo was a younger me, smiling awkwardly, hair tied back, eyes hopeful. Under my bio, it still read patient, gentle, helping you believe you can. I read it, smiled sadly. I didn't know if I could still be that person, but I knew I had to start somewhere. I updated my profile, new phone number, new email, new availability, available anytime. I had nothing left to lose, so I was ready. I sent 10 tutor applications, then 15, then 20. Afternoons passed in that quiet motel room, filled only with the sound of keyboard clicks and the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat reminding me I was still alive, still trying. I ate dry bread with tap water, drank cheap instant coffee, and kept sending applications. I had nothing but patience, and I clung to it like a life raft in the middle of an unforgiving sea. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from a mom in Houston. My daughter needs SAT prep. I read your profile and was really impressed. Can you start this week? My hands were shaking as I typed back, yes, I'm available anytime. Our first session took place at the public library near the bus depot. I borrowed a Chromebook, logged into Zoom using a free account, and waited. When Riley, a 16-year-old girl, appeared on the screen, her face anxious, her shoulders tense, I smiled gently and said, "Hi, Riley. I'm Odell. Let's start with whatever feels the hardest for you today, okay?" We began with math, then moved to writing. I showed her how to build an outline, how to break down a prompt, how to turn messy thoughts into strong ideas. At one point, she looked at me and asked, "Do you think I can actually get in?" I looked at her and saw myself at 17, scared, full of self-doubt, trying to hold it all together. And I told her, "I believe you can, and I'll be here with you." After 2 hours, she smiled just a little and said, "You're the first person who's ever made this make sense." I ended the Zoom call, and the tears came not out of sadness, but because for the first time in months, I felt like I mattered, like I could help someone, like I was still me. In the days that followed, more students came. A junior trying to get into tech school, a woman studying for her GED to find a better job, a high schooler chasing a scholarship with better essays. I taught in the mornings, afternoons, evenings, whenever I could. Every session earned me a little more. Every smile from a student felt like one more brick in the foundation I was rebuilding. I kept track of everything, every dollar earned, every hour, worked, every bill, every penny saved. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a tiny room, no neon signs blinking outside, no cigarette smell, no shouting families through paper-thin walls. Just me, a small desk, a chair, a window overlooking a quiet street with trees lining the sidewalk. I still remember that first morning in my new place. I made a cup of hot coffee, sat by the window, and let the sunlight warm my face. I placed my hand on the table, closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said to myself, "Odell, you made it through. You're starting over, and this time you don't need anyone's permission to exist." I didn't know what was waiting for me next, but I knew one thing: I was rebuilding quietly, patiently, but powerfully. And if you're listening to this, I want you to know something: you can start again too. No matter what you've lost, no matter who walked away, no matter how hard they tried to erase you, you're still here, and you still have a chance to rebuild, in your way. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with shouting or violence, it just slips in quietly and still tears your heart open. And the worst kind of betrayal is when it comes from someone who shares your last name. I had settled into tutoring regularly, session after session over Zoom, helping students refine essays, solve equations, and slowly, gently stitching back together the heart my family had torn apart. I no longer slept on a motel bed that smelled like old cigarettes. I was renting a small room in a shared apartment now. The window looked out onto a quiet street. Every morning I brewed a cheap cup of coffee, placed it next to my old laptop, and began teaching. I thought I had escaped them. I thought if I stayed quiet, focused on this new life, they'd leave me alone. Until one afternoon, right in the middle of reviewing Riley's essay, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, notifications, missed calls. I silenced it, tried to stay calm. Even when Riley asked worried, "Are you okay?" After class ended, I finally checked my phone. A message from an old friend, Meleus Odell: "You need to see this." It was a link to a newly launched website. The name Seraphine's Success Academy, my sister's name, in pastel fonts. Her face beaming with a perfect smile, holding a laptop against a spotless backdrop like every self-help TikTok ad ever made. I scrolled down. Comprehensive SAT program, scholarship essay strategies, personalized learning plans. I stopped breathing. The wording, the layout, the blue graphs with upward arrows, the essay templates, the study calendars. Every word, every graphic, every format, I had created it. Back when I was 20, pulling all-nighters to build this curriculum from scratch, believing that someday it could help students walk into test rooms without the fear I used to carry. I clicked the intro video. My sister's voice came on. "This is a system I've spent years developing." I froze. "I've developed." No, she didn't develop it. I did. I built it. From my tutoring sessions, from handwritten notes, from recorded mini lessons, from PDFs I revised over and over again. And now it had her name, her smile, her face, and not a single trace of me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there staring at the screen, my coffee cold, my knuckles white from gripping the mug too tightly. I remembered my mother's voice: "Don't make a scene. Family is everything." I remembered Seraphine's smirk. None of that nerdy study crap matters anyway. And yet here they were, turning the very thing I bled my youth into a brand, into cash, into her spotlight, while I was erased again. I texted Meleus back, "Thank you for telling me." She replied, "I'm so sorry. I didn't think they'd do this." I stood up, walked to the balcony, the afternoon wind brushing across my face. I thought about texting my mom, thought about messaging Seraphine demanding they take it all down, thought about posting the truth online, exposing them, writing a long Facebook post with receipts. But then I paused. They had once used silence to erase me. So now I would use silence too, but not to disappear. This time to strike back, stronger. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, Evidence. I saved the entire site. Screen recorded every lesson I had written, archived old emails I'd sent her where I had shared the drafts hoping for feedback. She had left me on read. I dug up my old USB, found scanned PDFs with original timestamps, found handwritten outlines, found recordings of early tutoring sessions I had made so students could rewatch them. I even found my grandmother's will. In her own handwriting, clear and firm, she left behind the copyrights to the curriculum, teaching methods, and all learning models to me. The words burned into my mind. Odell is the only one I trust to continue what I started. I organized everything, documented every timeline, every piece of evidence, every quote, every video where my sister used my work, every logo, every word I had ever written. I didn't cry. I worked quietly, patiently, methodically, the same way I had taught my students. Because this time I wasn't protecting anyone else. I was protecting myself. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in front of the glowing blue screen of my laptop. My eyes were tired, but no longer afraid. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how my sister would react. I didn't know what my mother would say. But I knew one thing: I would no longer let them steal my work. I would no longer let them steal my voice. Before shutting the screen, I looked at my reflection in the black monitor and whispered, "Odell, you stayed quiet because you thought silence would keep the peace. But you were wrong. Silence isn't weakness anymore. Now it's your weapon, it's your power, and you will reclaim what's yours." That's how I began to fight back with fierce silence. I used to think betrayal was when they stole your work and called it their success. But no. The deepest betrayal is when they come knocking again, not to say sorry, but to ask you to stay quiet. That day, I had just finished my last tutoring session. I closed my laptop, leaned back into the creaky wooden chair in my room, and took a long breath. Then my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Odell. My father's voice gravelly, tired but not warm. "Can you come home? We need to talk." I said nothing. He continued. "It's about... Seraphine's in trouble. The internet's turning on her. They're saying she stole the curriculum. They're calling her a fraud." I closed my eyes, heart steady and slow. They hadn't called when I was lost. Not when I was surviving on instant noodles. Not when I just needed someone to ask if I was okay. But now that the truth burned through their facade, now they remembered I existed. "Why should I come back?" I asked calmly. Silence, then a sigh. "Because she's family, family." That word used to make me soft. Now it just felt hollow. I hung up. That night I received an email from Seraphine's lawyer. The subject line: confidentiality agreement, settlement proposal. I opened the attachment. A wall of legal text. It asked me to withdraw all claims, delete all posts, and remain silent in exchange for a 6-figure payout. Enough to wipe out my student loans. Enough to buy freedom in another city. Enough to start over. I placed my phone on the table, eyes fixed on the wall where I had taped my grandmother's words. "You will build things no one sees yet." They didn't want peace. They wanted silence. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just a hush to keep the illusion alive. I made myself a cup of ginger tea, sat down, and read through the contract again. I thought about the students I had helped, the sleepless nights building lesson plans, every thank you I had ever received, every face that lit up when something finally made sense. I thought about all the birthdays they ignored, the dreams they mocked, the family photos they took without me in the frame. I had been quiet long enough for that silence to tear me apart, long enough to turn me into a shadow in the story I wrote. And now they wanted that silence again, to protect them. I took a sip of tea. The ginger burned my throat, but I wasn't afraid. I felt clear, calm, more certain than I had in years. I called my lawyer, Margot, a woman with silver hair and a voice like granite in a storm. "I received their offer," I said, "and I'm rejecting it." She paused, then said gently, "I'm proud of you, Odell." I smiled, not from joy, but from knowing I was finally doing the right thing. I opened my laptop, typed the email. Subject: settlement offer. Response body: "Thank you for your offer. I respectfully decline. I will not accept money in exchange for silence, and I will not erase the truth." I hit send, took a deep breath, and felt a quiet freedom settle into my chest. That night I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I didn't lose sleep. I sat by the window watching the warm yellow streetlights flicker across the road, the soft hum of passing cars below. And for the first time I felt free. Still broke. Still alone. But free. The next morning I posted a simple message on my personal page. "You don't owe silence to people just because they share your blood. I don't accept hush money for pain." I didn't cause. No photo, no filter, no hashtags. Just one line, but it cracked open years of silence like thunder splitting the sky. The messages poured in. Strangers, old classmates, students. People who had once stayed silent now spoke up. I was silenced by my family too. They stole my work as well. Thank you for saying what I've never had the courage to. I read each message, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from knowing I was no longer alone. They used to think I was weak, that I stayed quiet out of fear. But they were wrong. I was silent because I still hoped, because I still wanted to keep them, because a part of me believed they could change. But not anymore. They couldn't buy back my silence. They couldn't buy back my voice. I had spent too many years learning how to speak. I wasn't giving it up again. And that, my friend, is how I refused the hush money. Refused to shrink back into the shadow so they could remain comfortable. I chose myself. I chose truth. I chose freedom. You know, I used to be afraid of the truth. I thought that if I spoke up, I'd lose everything, any chance of reconciliation, the family I once loved, any future hope of being accepted again. But then I realized silence is the fastest way to lose yourself. After rejecting the hush money, I knew my family wouldn't back down easily. And I was right. Just a few days later, I received a notification from my online tutoring platform. Your account has been reported for copyright violation. It has been temporarily suspended. I stared at the bold red text on my old laptop screen. My hands shook just a little, but I didn't panic. I opened the email. The sender, the media company behind Seraphine. They had launched their legal attack, and they aimed straight for my only livelihood. A clear message: be quiet or starve. That night, I brewed a cup of hot tea, sat at my desk under the soft yellow glow of the lamp, and looked at the pile of evidence I had spent months preparing my grandmother's will. My original curriculum sketches from when I was 20, the email where Seraphine once said, "Thanks for sending the materials," the raw files with timestamps and edit histories, the thank you notes from my earliest students, video clips of them saying, "You helped me so much." I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't silent anymore. I picked up my phone, typed a message to Margot, my lawyer. "Let's begin." She called me back, her voice calm and steady. "Odell, I've been waiting for this day." The next day, we filed a counterclaim with all the evidence attached: intellectual property records, my grandmother's will, original files, email exchanges, even videos of my original lessons. Once it was sent, I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled deeply. I knew that whatever happened next, I wasn't silent anymore. But I knew that wasn't enough. They didn't just want to silence me quietly, they wanted to ruin my name. So I opened my laptop's camera, set up a plain corner, natural light from the window, no filters, no edits. I looked straight into the lens. My voice trembled at first, but then it steadied. "Hi, I'm Odell. I am not a thief, and I won't be silent anymore." I held up my grandmother's handwritten will, reading aloud her words. "All curriculum and teaching methods belong to Odell." I showed an old email from Seraphine thanking me for sharing my material. I showed the original files, the timestamps, the edit history, the thank you notes from my students, clips of the classes I poured my soul into. Then I looked straight into the camera, took a deep breath, and said, "I stayed silent because I didn't want to hurt my family. But they didn't think of me when they hurt me. The truth deserves to be spoken, and I won't apologize for protecting myself." I hit post, publicly. The video spread faster than I expected. Former students shared it. She helped me pass my SAT. She was the only one who believed I could win that scholarship. I don't believe she would ever do something wrong. Comments poured in. Why didn't Seraphine credit Odell? Why is she using someone else's work? Why sue the very person who created the material? I didn't respond to all the messages, but I read everyone. Even strangers messaged me. "Thank you for being brave. My family stole my work too. You're not alone." That evening, my mother called. She was crying, her voice shaky. "Odell, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would go this far." I sat in silence. The apology I'd waited for my entire life now floated in the airlight as a breeze. I didn't know if I could forgive her, but I knew I didn't need her recognition anymore. "I understand, Mom," I said, "but I'm not taking the video down." I hung up. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of release. The next day, the online tutoring platform reinstated my account. They emailed an apology for the inconvenience, said the evidence I'd provided was clear, and confirmed they would protect my intellectual property going forward. I sat by the window holding a hot cup of coffee. The sunlight warmed my face. My heart felt empty, but peaceful. I had spoken the truth, and the truth had protected me. Maybe you're staying silent too. Afraid of losing something, afraid of hurting someone, afraid you won't be loved anymore. But I want you to know this. Truth is healing. You don't need permission to protect yourself. You don't have to stay quiet just to make others comfortable. If you're hearing this, I want you to comment, "I choose the truth." So I know you're ready, ready to heal, ready to stand, ready to choose yourself. After every storm, you won't be the same person. You'll stop believing in pretty lies like family is everything, especially when everything meant silencing yourself to survive. But in that breaking, you'll discover freedom. You'll discover healing. You'll begin to live a life that's actually yours. I still remember that morning when things finally quieted after days of fighting to reclaim my voice. I brewed a cup of coffee, stood by the window of my small rented room. The sunlight streamed through the frosted glass, warm and gentle, and for the first time in years, I didn't wake up startled in the night, didn't check my phone to see if they were threatening me into silence again. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my online tutoring account. Messages flooded in, thank you notes from former students, words of encouragement from strangers across the world. Thank you for speaking up. You gave me the courage to stand up. Because of you, I believe I can start again. Each message felt like a delicate stitch, mending the holes inside me, bit by bit. I began accepting tutoring sessions again. Riley, the girl I helped prepare for the SAT, messaged me excitedly. I got in. She sent a photo of her acceptance letter, her face glowing in the sunlight, eyes shimmering with hope. I smiled. A quiet pride bloomed in my chest, a gentle warmth that stayed with me all day. The tutoring sessions resumed, but this time I wasn't just teaching math, essay writing, or study plans. I was teaching them how to believe in themselves, how to listen to their own voices, how to protect their dreams, even when no one else supported them. Every lesson was no longer just a means to pay rent. It became a space for healing for them and for me. I started saving again, tracking my spending carefully, building a long-term plan. I no longer felt ashamed of saving money, of turning down social events, of drinking instant coffee instead of the fancy kind. I understood now rebuilding your life doesn't happen overnight, and I was okay with taking one steady step at a time. One afternoon during an online session, a student messaged me privately. "You seem a bit sad today. Are you okay?" I looked into the camera and smiled softly. "I'm okay, truly." I realized that I used to be afraid of letting people see me not okay, worried that if my students knew I'd once fallen apart, they'd stop believing in me. But now, I understand. To be seen as human imperfect, not always strong, is also part of healing. I started writing again. I wrote down everything I had been through day by day, tear by tear, every time I stood up again. I wanted to turn my story into a small ebook, not to sell, but to gift to my students and to those who once messaged me saying they were afraid of being rejected by their families, who had their voices or dreams stolen. One evening, as the city lit up, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. Cool air brushed my face. I was no longer afraid of walking alone, no longer afraid of the silence at night. I had learned to enjoy the quiet, to hear my own footsteps on the empty road, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, and to feel grateful that I was still here, still breathing, still living a life I chose for myself. I returned home, opened my laptop, and wrote a post. I'm no longer the girl who tried to please everyone just to be allowed to exist. I was once erased from my own family's story, but I didn't disappear. I'm still here rebuilding my life piece by piece with people who truly value me. If you're reading this, remember you can start again, no matter what you've lost, no matter who turned their back on you. The post was shared and more messages followed. One student wrote, "I screenshotted your post. I read it every time I want to give up." I smiled, tears brimming in my eyes, because I realized I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was lighting a torch of hope for others who felt lost in the dark. I had once been afraid. I had once been shattered. I once believed I couldn't go on, but now I am beginning again. learning to heal, learning to love myself, learning to live without asking permission. And if you're hearing this story, I hope you'll begin too. It doesn't have to be grand. Just one small step, a message, a phone call asking for help, a quiet morning where you make yourself a cup of coffee and whisper to your reflection, I deserve a full life. Because you do. You truly do. You know not all endings come with applause. There are no tearful reconciliations, no warm embraces, no regretful apologies from the ones who hurt you. Some endings are quiet, like a morning when you wake up, take a deep breath, and realize you've saved yourself from the darkness. I remember that morning clearly. I woke up while the mist still lingered in the sky. Soft sunlight streamed through the small window of my quiet rented room. I made myself a cup of hot coffee, my hands still trembling slightly, but my heart felt light, no longer heavy with the weight of trying to please people who never wanted to understand me. I opened my laptop, read through messages from students and strangers alike. Thank yous for speaking up, for standing my ground when even my own family turned away. Each message was a quiet warmth, a reminder that in this world, there are still people who understand how painful silence can be and how powerful it is to speak the truth. I started my day with an online class, small, but filled with students from everywhere, each carrying different dreams, different stories, but all holding one belief, that they deserved to learn to live to hope. And I believed in them just as I once wished someone had believed in me when I was a lost child in my own home. That evening when the city lit up, I sat at my desk and opened the old notebook my grandmother had left me. On the last page, in her trembling handwriting, she had written, "You will build the things no one sees today. But one day, you'll know you made a difference." I closed the notebook. Tears fell, not from pain, not from resentment, but from the deep relief of realizing I had done it. I had rebuilt my life, brick by brick, lesson by lesson. Word of encouragement, by word of encouragement for children no one believed in. I found my worth not in anyone's recognition, but in the grateful eyes of students I had helped. I no longer resent my family. I no longer wait for an apology. I no longer expect a call to check in. I've stopped hoping they'll understand. And I don't need their understanding to be at peace. I found peace in the choices I made to stop being silent, to walk away, to start again, to heal, and to believe in myself. If you're hearing this story, I know maybe you're somewhere in a dark room feeling like no one understands, trying to hold yourself together, so you're not erased from the lives of people you love. I want you to know you're not alone. You don't have to stay silent. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't have to disappear to keep the peace. You deserve a full life, a life. You don't have to ask permission to live. It can begin with the smallest things. Waking up a little earlier, making yourself a cup of tea, writing one sentence in a notebook, sending one email to ask for help, or simply standing in front of the mirror and saying, I deserve to be loved. Healing isn't a straight line. There will be days when you feel like you've made it through, and days when old wounds ache again. That's normal. Don't blame yourself. Don't give up. Keep going. Because you deserve a life of peace, a life with real laughter, with relationships that honor you, and with quiet mornings when you wake up, take a deep breath, and feel grateful that you're still here. I don't know what time it is as you hear this or where you are, but if this story has found its way to you, I want you to comment, I choose healing. So I know you're still here, so I know you're ready to walk your own path, so I know you've chosen you. If you're ready, I want to invite you to become part of a community of those who have dared to choose healing, dared to stand up, and dared to love themselves. Share your story, even just one sentence, one moment, one small thought, because you never know, your story might save someone sitting alone in the dark, believing there's no way out. We don't have to walk this path alone. We can hold hands, take small steps together, gently, slowly but surely. We can build a community where truth is honored, where dreams are protected, where those who were once erased get to write their names again. Comment, I choose healing, if you're ready, because I believe you are worthy, and I'll be here waiting for your story.